everyone. Welcome to the Law Firm Reboot podcast. My name is Nick Werker. Now, during this podcast, we'll be featuring recordings of panels that took place live at Answering Legal's 2024 Law Firm Summer Reboot Camp. Before we dive into that recording, I wanted to briefly let you know a little bit about the camp's host, Answering Legal. For those not already familiar, Answering Legal is a 24/7 virtual receptionist service that exclusively works with the legal industry. Whenever lawyers can't get to the phone, our highly trained receptionist team is there to make sure they never miss the new client. Answering Legal now even integrates with your favorite legal softwares and provides a free mobile app. As a thank you for checking out our podcast, we're giving you a special free trial offer of Answering Legal, which includes an additional $300 off of services. To take advantage of this offer, visit answeringlegal.com, book a discovery call with our team, and just let us know you watched our Reboot podcast. Please note that this is a limited time offer. Now, without further ado, let's get to our panel. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to day 2 of Answering Legal's 2024 Law Firm Summer Reboot Camp. My name is Nick Werker. I am still your host. You're still stuck with me today. Tomorrow, you won't have as much as me, I promise. As many of you already know, today is Legal Marketing Day here at camp, and for our next panel presentation, we'll be sharing details on what lawyers need to know about search marketing in 2024. Here to dish out info is our panel of experts, which includes Emily Brady, Jason Hennessey, Kevin Daisey, and Seth Price. Guys, thank you all so much for being here. Before we dive into the questions, we want to get to know our panel a little bit. I know, Seth, you've already done this. I apologize, but for anybody who is just joining us, panelists, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the places that you work, own, operate, and everything like that? I'll start with you, Kevin.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, by the way, it looks like me and Seth are in the same room over here. My office is getting redone. So, yeah, appreciate that. Thanks for having me, first off. My name is Kevin Daisey. I own, actually, part owner in multiple agencies, but my baby, my main agency that I'm the face of is Array Digital, and we niche with working with law firms in the digital space. I really say we're not a marketing company, we're a search company. So have a few, whole content team, SEO, big technical team, web developers, and we mainly focus on search, bottom of the funnel type stuff. We don't do social media. We don't do flashy stuff, other than building websites. So we're really just heavily focused on search. So
I'm moving on down the line. So Emily, you're up next.
Hi, yeah. My name's Emily Brady. Thank you for having me. I'm always excited to get to chat and nerd out about SEO and search marketing. I'm the director of SEO at Omniscient, which is a full-service digital marketing agency for growth-focused law firms. And I've been doing SEO specifically for lawyers and law firms for about 12 years now. So, I'm really pleased and excited to be here with such a great panel of experts and talk about search.
I hope you're not including me in that. Seth, how about yourself?
So my name is Seth Price, and I was a lawyer by training who stumbled into the SEO world, met Jason way back in the day digitally in a Atlanta meetup, and have geeked out on digital so much at the law firm that we created Blue Shark with our in-house team, and just have fun trying to beat the Google algorithm and make sure that we work alongside our clients to figure out how best to leverage their assets to get them the optimal results.
And last but not least, my man Jason Hennessey.
Well, thank you for having me on this podcast. Seth was in the room the day that I got into legal marketing, which was in 2008. And I've been doing SEO since 2001, but I'm only 27 years old. So do the math. So anyway, I'm happy to be here. I have an agency. It's called Hennessey Digital, and we primarily work in the legal space as well.
So that's awesome. My first question is kind of a cop-out question, but what's one search marketing trend that's really caught your attention in like the last few months? And I know I'm going to reserve my own thoughts, but anybody who wants to jump in, and talk about a search marketing trend. Feel free.
I mean, obviously, it's part of probably a lot of the questions that you had today, but with Google's AI, at the top of the results and all the changes that Google's been making in its positioning with AI content, but using AI itself, I think obviously that's the biggest thing right now. And then also it's Google's back and forth on, infinite scroll, back to pagination, and just experimenting with different things right now. So I think, obviously, its use of AI itself, but also its position on using AI to develop content and things like that. So I think that's kind of the biggest thing that I know we're following at the moment. So what else? What do you guys see?
AI content, I think, is probably the issue du jour if you're looking at the last few months. I think that part of as an agency owner, it's been sort of working both as a business owner and a shrink with our clients who are like, why can't we just cut ChatGPT and get rid of the cost of content and put it in there? And trying to figure out how to make sure that we take the benefits of AI innovation without harming our clients or allowing them to harm themselves by putting too much hamburger helper. I mean, clearly, over the last few years, from a search point of view, Google has probably spoken more about high-quality content than anything else. And the irony that we're sitting here is just like, yeah, that's true, but this is quick and easy. And so I think figuring out how to thread the needle there has been sort of the trend du jour.
So I'll jump in. I'll say that I think we're moving more towards a world where Google's looking at entities and association of entities. And so where most law firms probably don't even know what schema is, or they're just applying basic foundational schema. Schema is the language, the source code that you put on your website so that search engines understand that this is an FAQ or this is a video. I think you can build websites so much so where you're doing advanced schema, where you can actually start to tie association from this lawyer went to this law school, and you basically make the association in the schema source code. And that is where a lot of these AI bots are trained to kind of read that data anyway. So I think that's really the biggest thing that we're seeing.
I think I can kind of echo what Kevin and Seth were saying, but also Jason as well on the front, obviously on the AI front specifically. But I've just been really intrigued and having a lot of fun testing out the AI with content generation, right? Like AI is changing the way humans, like prospective clients, interact with search, but it's also changing the way we do SEO in the sense that we all have the ability to create content of varying levels of quality very easily, right? So when everyone's special, no one is, right? So how does that change the way we're creating content? But then, when you couple that up with like the AI summaries, the generative search, all of that kind of stuff, the entities come into play too, because it's like, well, how do I become an entity that Google wants to cite as a source within those types of AI summaries as well? So I guess that's kind of two trends in one, right? Like how are the summaries functioning, but then also how do we actually go about creating content using tools that are now readily available to us. But yeah, I don't know if that counts as a trend because AI has been around for a long enough now that it's kind of like a here to stay thing. But that's definitely kind of along the same lines to just echo what everyone else is saying.
I won't mention any names because I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. But I was on a tool demo the other day, and one of the things that the company was pitching me was the fact that they have a blog plugin that will write a blog post for you in your own tone and generate like an AI image for you that goes around. And I was reading this blog post and like, sure, the blog post makes sense, 100%. But like, I just don't think that follows guidelines and that you shouldn't really be pushing that. And I want to ask because Google's AI results, they generate answers based on established pages, but like, does that change the value of presenting a law firm as a subject matter expert in like a certain, like, you know what I'm trying to say here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jason.
I don't think your strategy necessarily changes much. I would say that you probably want to have, more concise answers to questions rather than long run on paragraphs and stuff like that, because that's the rich snip. You want to try to basically be optimizing more for rich snippets. And again, that leads back to the whole schema stuff that we were just kind of talking about, by making sure you're marking up the code in a certain way. And then there's some law firms that are like, hey, listen, how can I block AI from even knowing I exist, right? And so, like, I think that's like the wrong attitude. But you definitely want to be playing the game that, that Google is playing as well, and participate.
I think that, the question of like, okay, does it change the way we present law firms as experts? I would argue no, right? We're still pulling the same levers, to put it in like marketing speak, but getting a slightly different result, right? Because historically Google's wanting to rank the most relevant pages that are associated with the most relevant entities, but now they're just taking those pages and aggregating them into an answer. But I think this ties back to not a trend necessarily, but the framework that Google has given us for becoming an established authority or entity, which is the concept of EEAT, which is part of Google's quality rater guidelines. So that expertise, experience, authority, and trustworthiness, those are the things that I try to encourage my clients to really lean into, right? So that can be things like your schema, that's the quality and accuracy of your content, that's your backlinks, that's your media mentions, it's a lot of different things. And then also just like who you are as a person, your education and qualifications, and how are you presenting that not only on your website, but then everywhere else online. And being able to look at all of those different factors, like that's what I believe Google is taking into consideration when it's coming up with like, okay, who am I going to cite as a source for this particular answer? Like, who do I trust the most to generate an answer? So I guess the short answer is no, like it doesn't change the way that we're attempting to do this. It's just the result is going to be different for the end user. And that might change down the line, right? Like there are going to be new ways to do this, I'm sure. But for now, like I think the core problem we're trying to solve is the same, which is like, how do I present my website or my law firm or myself as the most relevant search result or the most citable source?
Yeah, spot on. I mean, that was kind of the same direction I was going to go with it. And there's elements on page that show that lawyer is the expert. They have track record. They have experience. I see lacking on lots of sites, honestly, in lots of areas. And I think, just having a blog that you write on that question versus working those FAQs within the pages and where you can show that EEAT is important. So, yeah, I agree. I don't think it changes at all. It's just how it might be pulling it, how it might be coming up. The results, those are going to change, of course, and how we do things. But it goes back down to if you have quality original content that can't be found elsewhere and is up to date. Those results are looking for fresher, up-to-date results. And a lot of these law firms have old, dated content that they've relied on for years, and they're going to be suffering for that and being replaced by, newer firms that come out with, fresh content that's not SEO'd and keyword stuffed, right? So I think the EEAT is massive.
So I want to ask this because obviously with like the AI search result, it seems as though Google is trying to move away from content marketing. I don't know if anybody would agree with that, but is content marketing still important in 2024? Or like, how do we conquer these search result pages, even though it's kind of generating its own answer?
I mean, I think it's a moving target, and that Google, what we see today is likely not going to be the same search results that we see in a year. I think at the end of the day, the thing that Google's always trying to figure out is who's authoritative, who's the real subject matter expert, and who's some guy in the basement trying to game it. And if as we've seen over the last few years, the trend has been towards brand and Google looking at what's an established authority. I mean, we see that with links as one of their pieces, even though they want to get away from it. So to me, I feel that whatever the end, interface looks like, where you have results being shown, AI, non-AI, whatever it is, that the job stays the same, which is demonstrating authority, because that AI content has to come from somewhere, and Google's preference is to take it from a trusted place. So Google has historically tried a number of different ways with authorship and other different, many failed experiments. If you can somehow take and authenticate or show authority with what you're presenting, I think it'll serve you well, whether it's traditional search that we've seen over the last couple of decades, or whether it's something closer to an AI search result, which I assume at some point is just going to be blended and AI will be part of the algorithm. But however it is, I think keeping your eye on demonstrating authority to Google will serve you well long term.
Yeah, and just to add, I mean, as businesses or as lawyers, content is not just for search. It's also conveying your message, your brand, your speaking to your ideal customer. If you have a niche audience or target that you're going after, so it's not just about search results. It goes deeper than that. It's conversion. It's how the client or the user interacts with your firm. What do they think of that? And do they want to take the next step? So there's a lot more to it. But I think if you I think it's interesting because everyone's like, oh, what's the tricks? What's the secrets? What's all this? It's really, come back to the basics of being real and doing things right and checking all the boxes, and putting out great content that people can interact with and want to read, and gives them the answers they want, but also allows them to make that decision of whether or not you're the right fit for them. So I just think it's a lot deeper than just search, but for the sake of the talk, So
yeah, I definitely I don't buy into that content marketing is not important. I think that forever it will always kind of be a very important variable. That's kind of the food that Google eats, right? Without content, there is no Google, right? But to Seth's point, the authority of the website is those that will basically get more of the eyeballs coming into the content, right? So if somebody has a website that has a really strong domain authority, right, that means that a lot of trusted websites link back to that website. And so therefore, those are the trust signals that Google uses. And at the same time, those firms that are building brands as well with billboards and TV and radio, another variable that Google looks at as well is how often people are searching for people's brand name. And that also adds to the level of the trust and credibility and all the EAT signals as well, right? So not all things are equal, right? So like if there's a reason why if a site like CNN publishes a story, right, it ranks like almost instantaneously, right, with breaking news versus like Jason Hennessey is a news reporter and all of a sudden I want to break news. Like Google doesn't trust me. You know what I mean? So therefore it's the same thing with legal.
And I think that the authority of brand, we've seen so much where TV players have had an advantage over the last couple of years. And I think that however you're demonstrating authority, some of it may be through, as Jason just said, through direct search traffic or branded search traffic. Some of it's going to be from other elements. That all comes into play as far as where Google is going to pull that information from. And while, yes, you can sculpt your answers to be closer to the rich snippet they're looking for, that's certainly going to be helpful. If you don't have the authority, it's not going to move the needle.
Correct.
Something else I that comes to mind when I'm thinking about like content marketing specifically, because it can be kind of a broad term. I specialize in SEO, like that's what I, have a strong bias to think about. But like with content marketing, it's not going to just be for organic search results. Yes, that's relevant now because we have AI summaries and like you're being cited there and like you can, get some visibility there. But I would expect as well, like as things continue to evolve and change, like content, we're talking about the written word, but the reality is like, even if tomorrow written content is not how Google is serving search results, humans are still going to be wanting to consume information. So like content marketing will just adapt to that. So whether it's, a blog page or, an infographic or video or, videos on social media, that type of thing. I think all of that kind of plays into like content marketing when you're looking at it from like the consumer perspective. And I think it behooves us as marketers and SEOs to do the same, right? Because sure, like this, it might change in what worked 5 years ago. Like that might not be the content that ranks now, but that's okay because Google's just getting better at identifying those entities that should rank. And so that's what I like about content marketing is like, yeah, like we can be talking about the page, it can be all kinds of different mediums. But at the end of the day, like Google's going to continue to change. People are going to continue to change the way that they search for things, and content marketing will just evolve with that, whether that be the medium of content changes or the way that people actually experience search results too. But all that to say, all that to say, I think it was Jason who said it, like Google doesn't exist without content. So it's always going to be important in some capacity. It's just going to look a little bit different.
Yeah, spot on. And I want to add to Seth and what Jason said. With the authoritativeness of the website, the domain rating, and the authority there. At the same time, I've seen examples where I had a prospect that had a really high DR, but was generating almost daily AI content. Their agency had kind of switched to like almost everyday blog type of campaign they had going on, and just lost all their SEO traffic. Literally, had like a crossover on their data, like organic pages was through the roof and their traffic just went the opposite direction. And so Google lost trust with that site, regardless of its authority that was there. And so I've also seen where it can be pretty dangerous to just assume, hey, Google's going to pick us because we've been here, and you can break that trust real quickly. So
I want to move on to paid search. Are local search advertisements, LSAs, paying off for law firms still?
For PI firms, generally, it's the best form of ROI. It's gotten tighter, and they're bastardizing in a bunch of ways, including the branded search, and they're about to take away challenges, which is going to clearly raise the price. But, for PI, different conversation for non-PI firms, but for PI firms, it has generally been significantly better ROI than traditional PPC. And we're seeing PPC in certain markets getting to the cost per case where it's not really competitive and that people are having to pull the plug.
Yeah, I think it's generally speaking, I think most law firms will take as much inventory that they can get with LSA, right? The problem is that just getting the inventory, right? Because you can only show up so much and there's limited spots and there's a lot more competition now than there was when LSAs first rolled out. It was the cheapest cost per case for a long time. Now that there's a lot more competition, it's still very cheap, but it's just, you're not just getting as much as you would have. And now people are using different strategies and getting offices in different locations just so that they can kind of get more LSA, right? So that, but I think, it's just one of those things, like with all paid, you just kind of experiment. If the economics work, right, you kind of do more of it, right? And it's the same thing with pay-per-click. Sometimes we have clients that experiment with pay-per-click only to realize that they shouldn't be doing pay-per-click just because their market is so competitive and you have a big firm that doesn't care about cost per case. They just want all the volume and their budget is $1 million per month. And if you try to come into a market with a $20,000 per month budget, you're just going to get eaten up there, right? So if the economics work, just continue to do it.
I think one of the frustrating things that we've seen is that, if we go back 3 to 5 years, you could experiment with PPC much more easily. Here's $1,000, here's $3,000, and test it. And we're now seeing minimum of 3, ideally 5, with a 2 to 3 month runway. Because Google's integrating AI and other of their own proprietary pieces to it, they don't want us playing around with it. They're incentivizing their methodology, which means that it is harder to dabble. And that sucks, because part of the way I started my own firm was $1,000 of PPC, clicks were a lot less. That worked, went to 2, went to 4, went to 8, kept growing at some point. Okay, well, the diminishing value, and we'll bring it down. And so, yes, LSAs have been significantly better. And for the most part, that has been what people are holding on to. I don't want to be, I have a bad feeling that we're going to see the cost of the LSAs go up significantly over the next 12 months. And while still possibly a good ROI or a good cost per case, I think it's going to knock some people out of that game. But that's just my prediction.
Yeah, I'll add a little context to it too. So yeah, I've talked to a lot of clients just to ask them how things are going with their LSAs. Some clients run them themselves. Sometimes we set it up for them. But I get mixed reviews depending on different markets around the country. And one of the problems I've seen recently, we have new clients that have come on board and they can't even get LSA. It's not available for them based on inventory, or it just says it's not available in their area, even though everyone in their area has them. And Google we actually talked to them. They're just like, yeah, they're not available for that area yet. And it's like, yeah, they are. And they just kind of walk around it. So it's harder for new firms to get in the game on that right now. And to your point, if it is saturated, they're just going to raise the price, right? So again, I've heard mixed reviews. Some get terrible leads from it. And in some cases, I have a workers' comp firm that they get like 70% of their leads are from LSA, and it does very well for them. So I think it's just very mixed across the board, as far as the results.
I push back a little bit. I mean, one-offs happen, but in the PI space specifically, getting in has never been easy. It was very hard for a long time to get verified. That process is been cleared up. Again, much of it does have to do with people's responsiveness. And that, to me, one of the veins of all digital marketing agencies' existence is intake. And I think that the irony was the LSAs were a big eye opener for people, that they really had to get their responsiveness up.
Oh, absolutely. Well, one of the problems I've seen, though, is it's not available in their area to even get right now in a lot of 3 different markets we've seen for clients, that it just says this isn't available for you to even set up. So the ones that have gotten into it early and have they're pre-screened or whatever, those are still fine. But it's new firms coming into it trying to get LSAs, they're just not available.
I think another challenge for new firms, is because you got to have, reviews are going to play into it, and that having, a listing that is very established is challenging when the firm is not yet very established in the eyes of an algorithm. It's like the classic SEO answer is it depends, but with LSAs, that tends to be how I approach it, right? It depends in the sense that, if it test it, if it works, that can be a great source of leads, but it shouldn't be your only source of leads, right? It's just one other way of many ways to get visibility in search result pages for those types of searches. So there are some qualifiers, obviously, but I'm a fan of LSAs if they work, right? Especially because in many scenarios, it can be a less expensive way to get that visibility and get those phone calls. But it can be tough too, right? It is very saturated. I think that legal marketing in general has that challenge very often on both the organic and paid side. But yeah, all in, I think LSAs are a good opportunity when they're a good opportunity, which is, pretty often.
So we were talking about this on our last panel that firms don't really have, or firms need to weigh the how much patience they have versus how much they're willing to invest in their future. So you can go with, pay-per-click, and you can go with LSAs to try and get cases now, but what are you doing to build your brand and your sustainability in organic SEO for the future? But I think some of the messaging, especially that I read, is that for smaller law firms, that organic SEO is dead. What would you say? What would you say to that?
I would look. People have been saying SEO is dead for as long as I've known Jason. You go to every conference. SEO is dead. Long live SEO. So again, it's going to take different forms. We may have AI components, but to me, the biggest thing is you have to be realistic about what resources you have. But with local search, you do have the ability to gain market share. It may not be, to use an example I used on a previous segment. If you're in downtown Atlanta, I mean, Jason and others have spent tens of thousands of dollars a month for years on clients in those markets. You're not going to walk in and own that market, but there's plenty of inventory, particularly post-proximity update, where you can get offices where there is inventory and you're able to get results. So to me, given that PPC is out in many markets. Some markets still left, but many, it's become prohibitive. LSAs working in most, I would say, for PI lawyers, but who knows what the next year is going to bring. To me, there's never been a better way to get a significant ROI well beyond 3-to-1 into the high single digits, if not beyond. And it has been through search.
Yeah, I'll jump in as well. I think, if you're right out of law school and you're about to start a firm, you probably don't have a big budget, but you kind of have to start somewhere, right? Because if you don't start somewhere in 5 years and 10 years, you still are in the same exact place, right? It's the same thing with anything in life. If you want to retire someday, you got to start saving, and that starts to compound. It starts to grow. If you want to lose weight, you got to go to the gym one day, and a month later, 2 months later, you start to see the results, right? So I don't think it's any different with SEO, but there's strategies that I would deploy a little bit differently if I was just out of law school. I wouldn't just try to be all things to all people and try to compete with the biggest firms that have been in the market for 20 years. I would start with my local area. If I am in Duluth, Georgia, I would build the best damn website about Duluth, Georgia personal injury lawyer. I would get an office in Duluth. I would do things locally in Duluth, right? I wouldn't even care about Atlanta. I just want to focus there, right? Because all you need is just a couple of cases, and then you start to compound, it starts to grow. And just with any business, you start out as an infant, and 3 years later, it's like, wow, people know me. I've been to conferences. I'm getting all these links, and then it just starts to happen naturally. Once you start to gain popularity now, I'm at a point now in my career where just people link back to us just because of everything that I've done over the past 20 years. Right. And that's just in any business,
I mean, I think it's when you start out. I mean, Jay, we get this question a lot. What do you do? And to me, if you have more time than money, you write content. What I started out doing, would sit down and look for directories I can get myself into back in the day. Now, looking at places, looking at your vendors that have websites. Before everybody didn't have websites, they have websites. Who can I ask? It's if you have time more than money. And I have a personal rule, which is around $400,000, that if you don't have the gross revenue at the firm over $400,000, it's very hard to spend meaningful money on SEO. You can get a website, you can do some basic SEO, but what I think of SEO, and I think Jason thinks of SEO with content and links, takes more advanced resources, knowing what your budget is. And once you have that, then you can figure out it. But until you get to that point, when you're in that scrappy place where you're, going out and taking coffees and trying to take people's crappy cases and build something, at that point, one of the things we haven't mentioned here is reviews. At digital agencies, we can do a lot of things for people, but if you don't have a mechanism to gain reviews, and that's something that I see some very young lawyers who don't have the resources for big time SEO, but actually know how to work social media and how to work their market. If you have, 2,000 people in your LinkedIn circle, there's no excuse for you not finding people you've done business with, just literally going down that and building it up. And I see people who are the best lawyers in their state by many different standards with 17 reviews. And it blows my mind. I'm like, you're 3 able-bodied people on a Zoom, and if each person flexed a tiny, tiny bit, they could build it. Whereas the guy coming out of law school has every one of his law school classmates endorsing him. I mean, there's stuff that's over the line, not over the line. You make sure you're on the right side of Google's guidelines. But if you are, if you have more time than money, getting your review count up so that someday when you can afford real SEO, that combination is going to be huge.
I like this question because it highlights 2 fun facts for fun SEO facts, which is the first one is if you're fresh out of law school and you have a website, or even if you're mentioned on your employer's website and they have person schema on it, it's not a matter of are you doing SEO? You are doing SEO. It's whether or not you're doing it proactively and whether or not you're doing it well or badly. It's happening regardless, right? If you have anything online, if you're in a directory, that is SEO. It's just, are you doing it proactively? And for, newer firms, newer lawyers who don't have that, history and established online presence. I think it's very much worth leaning into organic because And this is my second fun fact about SEO for a law firm specifically is in the legal fields was a pretty early adopter for organic search marketing, right? Like there was an interest in investing in organic marketing. So you have a lot of firms who have spent a long time building their SEO. And some of those firms have been doing it kind of spammy in the past. So you might have like old, outdated blogs, those types of things. If you're starting out fresh, like you have the disadvantage of no backlinks, no presence and whatnot, but at least you get to build it from the ground up the way that Google wants it to be built, right? Like you have the ability, going that concept of like, do you have more time than money, right? Like you can actually create content that's user first. And that's an advantage because now you don't have to go audit 1,000 old blog posts that are like 200 words long and like have only keywords and nothing of value, So that's the perspective that I would urge lawyers to take when they're like in that position, because it can be advantageous. Like build it from the ground up and do it right. Because if you're actually thinking user first now, that will pay you off in dividends in the future, like once you start to gather momentum. But the reality is if you have a website or if you're anywhere online, like SEO is kind of happening regardless. So you might as well just pursue that avenue to the extent that you can and take advantage of it.
Yeah, those are all good points here. I love helping law firms or lawyers that are starting up, whether it's just talking to them or talking to them about business and stuff like that. We've even tried to like come up with some plans and packages here that can assist those, solo firms, if you will. But it's challenging, like you're saying. And if you don't have the budget to hire someone to do it right, you have those constraints. I think a lot of people make mistakes where I see lawyers running their own PPC, like right out of school, and they're just blowing a lot of money and it's not working, and they're not putting any effort, energy into the SEO and writing the content. They're kind of trying to shortcut to PPC on their own. But I would definitely encourage the owners of any law firm, SEO is going to be part of your law firm forever, right? So learn it as best you can, have an understanding of it, be part of it as much as you can if you have the time, because you're going to get at some point caught up to where you won't have the time and you're going to have to invest.
Kevin, I'll push back a little bit. I mean, I mentor a lot of young people. I know Jason does. There are people that don't have an agency, and that I'm not saying this is, look, if you're a downtown Atlanta PI, probably shouldn't be running your own PPC. But for many lawyers out there, as long as you do study enough to know how not to burn money, search, not display, that it's negative keywords, you target well, you have a limited budget. I mean, those are the things where you learn and figure stuff out. So I'm a big believer, I wouldn't be here today if I had not dabbled and tried stuff, and that, the people that are innovating very often, if they were told you can't do it. So I would want to encourage people, don't be stupid about it. I remember when I first started, I somehow hit a wrong button and put display instead of search and blew $1,500 in a matter of minutes. And I was like, oh my God, I thought the world was coming to an end. But, putting that aside, like I feel that for many people listening to this, if you are starting out, I mean, again, it's sort of like going to Vegas. Make sure you're not gambling more than you can afford to lose. But at the same time, you got to start somewhere, and that those pieces make you an educated consumer when you eventually can afford a larger agency, because you can then communicate with them and work with them to try to get the best possible results.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you at all there. I meant, I see a lot not investing in the right ways. Just like what Jason said, I use the investment, analogy. Like you invest in you got short term, but you need to make sure that you're building for the long term and getting those reviews and able to write that copy and put that content out there and having a niche focus and a geographic focus. I think it's great to do PPC and set your LSAs up and those things, but just make sure that, have some understanding, talk to folks like yourselves and these mastermind groups that are out there available to you, to put your efforts in the right areas, because your time is going to be limited as a solo attorney, so it's, making sure you're putting money and time in the right places, I think is what I'm getting at.
So we actually have an audience member question. Brad wants to know what an LSA is. What does it stand for, and how much do they cost? And no, that is not a plant at all. That is a genuine question, and I appreciate it, because we're joining this to learn, everything that we possibly can about, starting up our advertising. So who wants to build this for me?
Seth, why don't you answer it?
Sure. Local service ads are a couple years old now. They started the home improvement space for Google. It's a pay-per-call where instead of paying for clicks that will hopefully determine a call, you can pay for calls or chats. And in the PI space specifically, the personal injury space, it has been started off as a very, very good ROI. It is still generally a solid ROI across the boards, limited exceptions. Outside of the PI space and legal, some work, some don't work. And Google has, taken this program. It's a lot clunkier than traditional PPC. We have a lot less buttons or pulleys that we can push. Budget and responsiveness are a big, big factor as to whether or not you're shown. So the game that we play within particularly the PI space, but anybody who's trying to get it, is can you get inventory? And unless you give enough of a budget, likely will not be spent. And secondarily, you pick up the phone or answer chats, you will see results that are right now a pretty decent ROI. All of that said, if you set this up and you don't answer the phone or the chats are going somewhere that you don't see, Google will sandbox you for 90 days and then you're done anyway. So if your operations are not in place, it's likely to be a very short-lived experiment. But local service ads are essentially Google's lead gen product.
And just to piggyback off that too, in the PI space, Seth, you mentioned specifically, there can be, I think it requires a bit more testing in more niche practice areas, right? But there can be definitely an appetite for it in practice areas that have a traditionally lower search volume. So I would still encourage firms like, don't take it to mean like you can't do LSAs if you're not personal injury, because it can be.
No, I wasn't saying. What I was saying it was a much greater likelihood of success there versus none. Yes, do it, experiment, but know that if you take your eye off it, I'll give you an example. My law firm has trust and estates. It's a relatively high-end practice that does larger dollar wills and trusts. We did not see a conversion at all. Whereas clients that have a low dollar trust and estates product where people are just clicking, that is more likely to convert if you can do a $1,000 or $2,000 estate plan than your likelihood of success. So that's just one example. Test and you mark everything, but know there's a decent chance it may not work outside of the PI space.
Yeah, definitely. And then the second half of the question being about like how much does it cost? I do SEO, so I'm not going to pretend to have all of the answers off the top of my head there, but it is one of those things where it's going to like vary depending on like location, how competitive, practice area, those types of things. So to piggyback off what Seth was saying, you got to test it and try it and see what's effective, but you definitely have to test it with the necessary amount of budget, because if you're not using like showing up enough, then it's not going to be successful regardless. So
it's frustrating,
about,
right? And
you having the ability to test historically, right? We don't have that as much as we used to on the paid side now. So I would say if you're going to test, like you do have to jump in with both feet. Otherwise, it's definitely going to flop. But yeah.
I was going to follow because it's something that I've noticed has been with non-PI clients. They'll spend your money. It's going to get spent for the most part. I'm generalizing. Whereas in PI, it's hard to spend money in many markets, and that you may need to have a budget significantly more than what you want to spend in order to get your little piece of the pie, which can be unsettling. And I tell most people in most markets, God forbid it succeeds and spends your crazy budget that's there. If there's inventory, which there won't be, then you'll borrow money, you'll figure it out. The cases will be worth something and you'll want it. So that's, I think, the back and forth, which is it is much more of a black box. Give them money and then they'll give you these calls. Historically, although they tell us that they're going to stop this, you've been able to dispute calls that weren't valid, and that allowed you to bring your costs down. They're claiming now it's going to be all AI, which is kind of scary, where they're not going to be any more disputed leads, which in essence is going to raise the price of each conversion.
There is a tool. Google has a page where you can plug in your zip code and how many leads you're wanting, and it will spit out like a budget. And so it's, it varies by market and by what practice of law you're in. So, but there's a tool, if you just Google, I think Google Local Service Ads, they have a page you can scroll down and plug that in to get an idea. It's just an estimate, of course. Oh, Seth is spot on. I mean, if you don't monitor and you're not taking care of these leads that are coming in, Google won't show you, and you can definitely raise the budget to be shown more. We've seen that work with lots of clients in different industries and across the board. So, but if your intake's not good, you don't have a good, someone answering the phone and taking it, then this is not going to work out well for you. So make sure, you're working on your intake and improving that process. Call your law firm, mystery shop it and see what the experience is like and work on that.
Shameless plug for Answering Legal.
There you go.
By the way, I was at Jason. I get back from vacation. I find a nice certificate that we answered our phone, so I was very excited.
Nice, congratulations, man! We reached out to 1,400 law firms, and only 360 people responded back to us in 5 minutes or less. So that's good. Congrats, man.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Good test.
I'm going to ask our panel to prognosticate for a little bit. Where do you see the future of legal marketing, or I shouldn't say legal marketing, where do you see the future of search marketing headed in light of this discussion?
My first inclination, I think we alluded to this earlier when we were talking about trends, but with AI on the search side and also on the marketing side, as a tool, I think obviously that's going to have a massive impact, because everyone's producing more content now of questionable quality sometimes, right? If it's being produced really quickly. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Google is rolling out helpful content and spam updates at a higher velocity than they have historically. So I think what we will continue to see is Google attempting to understand what is what is relevant and valuable content, and truly, again, and what are entities that should be recognized as the most authoritative when there's only one right answer and everyone's saying the same thing. So I think that's probably the direction we'll keep going. It ties back to what Jason about schema, all of that, the EEAT, all of those kind of things. I think that we'll just see Google continue to get better and better at identifying spam or, not relevant, not authoritative entities that are publishing, and hopefully better at rewarding content that is truly helpful and user first. And then, of course, finding new ways to mix up the search results page. Back to the PPC side of things, my favorite SEO fact is that Google makes the majority of its revenue from paid ads. So I think that that's also going to be relevant, right? As we see AI summaries coming in, we are also going to continue to see paid ads being an extremely important part of strategy too. But yeah, I think content is going to continue to evolve, and I'm excited for that.
So I see the future as, obviously we have AI now, and AI could be a strength or it could be a weakness, right, for you. Content is just one thing. People can take an article right from ChatGPT and take it and publish it on their website, right? And just say, okay, let's just do this 500 more times, right? And that's fine and dandy and all, but if you don't have the authority, if your website doesn't have the authority, it's not going to be effective, right? However, sites like Seth, if he were to do that, and I'm not saying that he would be a little bit smarter than just taking a ChatGPT article and placing it on his website. But if he were to do that and just optimize it and use certain tools to kind of make it a little bit more unique, his chances are 90% higher of that page ranking, right? Because there's so many more trust signals, there's links. We've been running some experiments where we have a brand new website right now. It's called motorcycleaccidentlawyer.com. That's a brand new website with no links, nothing. And we're publishing a lot of content on that website, all 100% AI, right? It's doing okay. We're just kind of using it to test. But I'll take a website, I published a page on a site that's very authoritative on a very well-known firm about getting injured at the Daytona Bike Week, right? And it's just 100% AI directly from ChatGPT, a little bit of optimization, placed it on the website. boom, ranked number 2 on Google, like within hours, right? And then generated like 7 signed cases as a result of the Daytona Bike Week, right? So my thought process here is like, you can fake, the content and stuff like that, but you can't fake the authority, right? And that's really takes time and years and years and years of link building and stuff like that. But that is a big advantage that most firms that have been doing SEO for a long time have in the world of AI now.
Right. I would say that, like, I'd also caution people, like, Jason, I assume you agree, like, that's you have a site, it's authoritative, it's good content. You do one piece of AI content for something instantaneous and awesome, right? Mm-hmm. But what I've also seen is that people that sort of abused it and it went from one page worked, and they put in a library of it.
Sure.
I mean, there's some significant case studies where people with high levels of access to Google have seen, yes, we tank this site because if you think about it, particularly if it's ChatGPT, Emily, you just mentioned Google's in it to make money, right? Ads. They're not an investor in ChatGPT. So yes, they're coming out with their own AI, but they have an interest in not letting that succeed big time. So as a one-off project, cool. History is written by the victor. Sounds like a cool story. What scares me is we have clients that come and say, oh, we have a new content writer. We put it through third-party tools, which are clearly not as good as what Google has. And if you're just dumping crap in there, and when you do it, there's great uses of AI. You want to write a thank you note, you want to do something where you don't care if it's plagiarized, that's one thing. But if Google's looking for authoritative content, it's a risk factor for their authority, for their credibility, then I think that, like, that's one of those things that if you say, like, what conversations we have with clients, one is intake, but second is, why can't I just fill my website with some rounded edged ChatGPT content?
Fair. Yep.
No, that's spot on. I think Google has its interest is on the user getting the information they want. And so if it's a bunch of AI generated content, that's not, meeting their interest. And Google's going to always have paid, search or LSAs or other things that might come about. So that's always going to be ever changing, I think. But my case study I mentioned earlier in the show here is, we actually have a new client because they had someone that had done all AI and just tanked the whole site, and it completely lost all organic traffic almost down to zero. When they had established a pretty good authority and content over the years, repeated AI over time just tanked them completely. So, I've seen that firsthand. So I think back to the question, AI is going to be part of it. Voice search, how people search, if you're doing by voice, and that's always on the rise, of course, and it's just going to impact things. And then, of course, Google's testing lots of different things. They're backtracking on things. They're experimenting here and there. So we're just going to have to keep up with it. But I think if you stick to producing good content that's helpful to people, you're going to be on the right track. So
we're coming up on time. If our campers want to continue following your work and connect with your company further, where do you recommend they go? And I'm going to start with you, Kevin.
They can go to arraydigital.com or I'm on LinkedIn heavily, so you look up Kevin Daisey on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect and answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Kevin. What about you, Emily?
I'm terrible about keeping up my social media, so I'm not going to PR that. But you can check us out at omniscient.com. Again, we're a agency for law firms, growth-focused law firms, and I head up the SEO there. So, but we're full service in that regard. But that's omniscient.com.
Thank you very much, Mr. Seth Price.
Sure, all the socials. Facebook, LinkedIn, you pick it. I'm sure I'm there. Love talking about this stuff and happy to chat offline.
Last but not least, my man, Jason Hennessey.
Am I the only one that uses OnlyFans or what?
Dude, I subscribe.
I follow you on there.
I've made $5 so far in 10 years of that I've had it.
I was $1. I was $1.
Okay, thank you. So if you can find me I'm very active on LinkedIn, Instagram. I post video content every single day with short little tidbits of information and insights. And if anybody is watching this and wants me to mail them a free copy of my book with no shipping or handling or anything, just shoot me an email, just my first name, Jason @Hennessey.com, and we'll get that in the mail for you. Thank you.
Awesome. So that is all the time we have for this discussion. I would like to thank Emily Brady, Jason Hennessey, Kevin Daisey, and Seth Price for joining me today.